Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later in the program, we're going to be talking about cowboys. Check this out. Cowboys are the wrong role model. You're going to love this, I guarantee you. But first, a friend of ours, Mark Waller, state representative and now minority leader for the Republicans in the state house. You poor bastard.
Well, I suppose if you're going to be in the minority, I guess being the leader's the place to be.
I'm the leader of the losers. Is that the? Yeah.
That's well. We won't say the leader of the losers. The leader of the second place finishers.
Okay, that works. That works. One of the reasons I want to talk to you, not only get a flavor for what's going to be different now that Republicans are in the minority, but you've had a particular interest in prison spending and what we do in sentencing in Colorado. As times get tight and we've had all these laws that put more and more people in jail, that we've had a situation where we're spending all this money to put people into jail. In the last couple of years, there seems to have been a consensus, and tell me if I've got this right, that we needed some sentencing reform, that what we had, people going to jail for having this drug compared to that drug, really wasn't a much parity. We were putting in jail people who were non-violent drug users instead of getting them the help they needed. And it was one of those few instances where the left seemed to at least pat us at the Independence Institute on the back saying, well, at least you got it right on this one. And there seems as though there was progress on that. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. And let me set the stage for you. I'm actually the person, I'm a Republican prosecutor, and I'm the person that in 2009 ran the bill to reduce recidivism through changes in the drug sentencing laws. So we reduced some felony drug sentences down to misdemeanors, some higher class felonies down to lower class felonies. And the idea behind it was it would save the taxpayers about $55 million over 5 years, and then we would in turn be able to take some of that money and apply it to recidivism reduction or apply it to preventing people from going back to prison. We have been very successful in that. In Colorado, we have reduced crime in the state by 32% over the last 5 years, yet somehow prison spending continues to grow out of control.
I see. This is where I'm losing it, because it seems like we're going in the right direction. Prosecutors, law enforcement, victim advocates, and those who represent the people who are going to jail have really worked well together, it seems, over the last few years to have that debate and come up with things that at least they can agree on to get less people in prison. But if I'm reading the budget right, there are less people in prison in Colorado, but we are spending more money to keep people in prison. Now, I went to a government high school, so maybe I got this wrong, but that's crazy, right? What's the problem here? If we've done the right thing to reduce the population of prisoners in Colorado and better spend our money, why are we spending more money on it?
Let me put it into perspective for you. The last time we had an equivalent number of prisoners in Colorado prisons was around 20,000 prisoners. That's people that are incarcerated and on parole. The last time we had an equivalent number of those was in the 2004-05 budget cycle. We spent $160 million, or roughly $160 million less to house that same number of prisoners, just 7 or 8 short years ago.
Wait, so we have the same amount of prisoners that we had a few years ago, but we're spending 160 more,
160 million more. Out of about a $600 million budget, so it's not $160 million out of a $1 billion budget. It's $160 million out of a $600–700 million budget.
Did we upgrade all their cells? Are they all getting full cable now? Is there masseuse? What's the difference?
Yeah, and John, quite honestly, most of that doesn't go into the prisoners themselves. That's all in health, life, and dental, other benefits for people who work in the prison industries. That's where the vast majority of that money goes.
So the money is not going necessarily to the people in the cells. It's going into the union benefits, or the benefits, I don't know if they're unionized or not, the benefits of the people who work the system. How many prisons do we have? And if we have fewer and fewer people, is it time to close a prison or two?
It absolutely is time to close a prison or two in the state of Colorado. And that's something that we've been working on over the last couple of years. We were able to close Fort Lyon down 2 years ago, and now I think there are some struggles with trying to figure out how to repurpose that and how to make sure that community has some economic viability because that was the central employer for that community. We also last year were able to close down a prison, or we're in the process of closing down a prison down in the Canyon City area. It's called the CSP2 prison, which ironically,
CSP,
Colorado State Penitentiary 2. So we have Colorado State Penitentiary 1 and Colorado State Penitentiary 2.
Both in Canyon City?
Both in Canyon City. This was a close capacity prison, or one that has a close custody, intensely supervised prison. And it's our newest prison, and oddly, it's the one we had to close down because it only worked for that kind of prisoner, and we just don't have those prisoners anymore. We don't have the numbers to sustain that prison being open.
This is a good thing, right?
It is, absolutely.
It's a good thing when we close a prison because it means that we've got less bad guys, or at least less bad guys. We're spending less money, but we're spending more money. I've even heard that the governor wants to take one of these prisons you want to close and turn it into some sort of housing unit for veterans or homeless or what?
You know, and I suppose that's an opportunity, and that's something we can do. But before we get to that point, we need to get the prison spending in line with the number of prisoners that we have. We need to create the efficiencies in the Department of Corrections that we have asked every other state agency to create over the last 4 or 5 years.
Because it happens when Medicare rolls go up or down, the costs go up or down. When education rolls go up or down, then the budget goes up and down. Here you've got the state penitentiaries becoming lower, but the costs are going up.
Sure, and let's compare it to other state agencies. So higher education, for example, in the state of Colorado has been reduced significantly. The funding for higher education has been reduced significantly in the state of Colorado over the last 4 years. K through 12 education has pretty much held stagnant in the state of Colorado over the last 4 years, yet somehow prison spending has continued to skyrocket. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if we could take some of the dollars that we spend on prison beds and spend those on desks in classrooms? Wouldn't that be a much better use and investment of that money?
I understand why a lot of Democrats philosophically don't want this. That you're talking about a large amount of state workers who are getting employed through this, and they don't want to lose those state workers. Hopefully, workers that could be unionized and be part of collective bargaining. But there are also a fair amount of Republicans that seem to be dragging their feet on closing prisons. I haven't understood that one.
Well, I think one of the issues is, obviously most of our prisons are in rural communities. Those rural communities are obviously represented, or maybe it's not obvious, but are represented typically by Republican members of the legislature. And there's certainly a lot of pressure from their community members to try to keep the economic viability within their region sustainable. And prisons contribute to that sustainability in those different regions.
So for them, it's not an ideological thing. It's more that my community is employed by the prison. I got to represent them.
And that's right. And it's a fair, it's a fair point of discussion and a fair point to consider when we're looking at closing these prisons down. But the reality is, we don't need them. And we shouldn't be spending dollars to guard empty prison beds.
Do you think you're going to make any movement on this one? I mean, Republicans were key in sentencing reform. Matter of fact, it were the Republicans that really needed to get off the dime to say, it's okay, you're not soft on crime if you punish somebody in a different way instead of that's less expensive. That doesn't mean you're being soft on crime. Now, with a 9-vote difference in the House, is any of this possible?
Well, I think we've had a little bit of movement on the issue over the last couple of years. In fact, we passed a piece of legislation last year that created a prison utilization study. Personally, I don't think we needed the study. I think we could have done it without the study. We know what the issue is. We know the populations are going down, and we know that we need to close prisons. Here's where I think we're going to end up having movement on the issue this year. We have 2 different kinds of prisons in the state of Colorado. We have privately operated prisons, and then we have state-operated prisons. The state-operated prisons are the ones that have the state employees union. The privately operated prisons have employees that are not unionized in any way. I think my friends on the other side of the aisle are going to push to close those privately operated prisons down in the state of Colorado. Privately operated prisons that, by the way, are able to house prisoners at a lower cost than the state-run facilities are.
It's not a surprise. I mean, a lot of people, I remember this from my days at RTD, people think that private operators of buses save all their money, and there was about a 40% savings. Same bus, same route, same time schedule, same service, checked by GPS, but it's because they pay their drivers less. And that's partly true, but very small, and that most of it was work rules. That when you get into the government contracts, the guy who drove the bus can't clean up the bus. Another employee has to do that. The guy who cleans up the bus can't change the reading lamp that he finds burnt out in the bus. He's got to fill out a work order. It's got to go to some other mechanic. So you've got 3 guys doing the job that a private operator would have 1 guy do, and that's where the savings are. Let me switch gears a couple minutes here. You're now in the minority. Last couple of years, you got to enjoy the powers of the majority in the House, which really wasn't much of a majority. You had 1 vote advantage. Now it's switched, and it's switched bad. You know, Republicans are definitely in the minority. What does that mean for Republicans, for the state, and also for Hickenlooper? I would argue that you guys were a little safety valve for him for the last few years, that truly loony beans kind of bills never made it to his desk, and that's not going to happen. This is going to be like Ritter all over again when he's going to have to make some tough choices. Why even show up?
You know, I disagree with one thing you said, and you said that we were a little safety valve for the governor over the last 2 years. I think we were a huge safety valve for the governor over the last 2 years. Oh, we were able to stop a lot of stuff. Well, I don't even think it was a matter of stopping stuff. I think it was a matter of we're not even going to introduce this, you know, incredibly far left legislation or this extremist legislation because we know it's not going to be successful in the House. For example, we were in the majority for 2 years in the State House. The 2 years prior to that, we had repeal of the death penalty as a bill that came forward. We didn't see that for the last 2 years. We're going to see that again this year. We had Second Amendment restrictive legislation, gun control legislation 2 years prior when we weren't in the majority. For the last 2 years, we haven't seen any of that. Yeah. I think we're going to see 11 or 12 bills that way this year. We're seeing a huge Medicaid expansion in the state of Colorado this year as well. We've
only got a minute here. You're in the minority. They've got a 9-vote majority. Is it really worth even showing up? I mean,
absolutely.
Take a few months off. What difference does it make?
You know, here's what we have. We don't have the votes to pass the legislation, but we absolutely have a voice in the state of Colorado, and we're going to exercise that voice. That doesn't mean we need to stand at the top of the mountain and yell down with a bunch of vitriol. No, we need to dissent when it's appropriate to do that, but we need to do it in a respectful and an appropriate manner. Without a doubt.
Mark Waller, better you than me. I don't envy your job at all, but thank you for joining us. And I tell you what, let's check back a couple times in the session and see how it goes.
Thanks. I'd be happy to do it.
Stand by. You're going to need a cowboy up for this one.